Allison Bernard, welcome to Radioacktiva. How are you?
Oh,
Very well.
very well, thank you. Thank you for
Um,
having us on.
no,
Yes.
I'm really excited. I mean, the documentary is about to premiere here in Colombia, and of course we're excited. Lots of things to ask, but I guess the first of all, which I'm pretty sure is a question you already answered several times, is like, okay, since the very beginning, like, were you aware that you were like against all odds to make this happen? Like, Led Zeppelin, they've never been the most open band about their life and adventures. So how did that happen?
Yeah, Wes, we knew from the beginning it was going to be difficult, but that was what we like. We like a challenge. So if the story had been told before, we wouldn't have wanted to do it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We specialize in extremely difficult or things that people think are impossible. That's what
Yeah.
we like to
That's what
do.
we like, a
Yeah, a
challenge.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah.
We made a series of films before called American Epic with Robert Redford,
Mhm.
and we were looking for something to do after that. And and
And they were about the first blues, gospel, country records made in the 20s and 30s. And everyone said, you can't make that film. There's no film footage and it can't be told. And we went out and over years found it and found this film footage. So when we came to do a follow-up film, I said I would like to do a film whose story begins in the 40s and goes through to 1970, like carries on from American Epic. And I said, I read a book about Led Zeppelin when I was 12 and I loved the story. And it was a book just on it was published in the early part of the group's career. So it's just on the beginning. And I didn't know I had never heard their music when I was 12, but I loved this story. And then I started listening to the records and got into them. So I said to Alison, I said, I know this is a good story because I read that book twice. And so we started
we started researching to see if there was enough footage to tell a film. And we wrote a script and then we wrote a storyboard. So we spent 7 months preparing.
yeah. And then and a couple of people were like saying, you're mad
Yes.
doing all this
They'll
work.
never agree.
Yeah, they've never done a film.
No,
And
yeah,
we just went, well, we're gonna do it anyway.
yeah.
And then we reached out to the group and amazingly they agreed to meet. And when we met, we found that Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were fans of American Epic. And when we sent American Epic to John Paul Jones, he had actually made a pilgrimage to Virginia, where the first American epic story was, which was the Carter family. And he traveled there himself and met the people. So there was this connection with our work, but we were very prepared. We'd spent months and months and months figuring out how to make this film and then putting it all down on paper.
And then there was another personal connection, wasn't there? That was like a coincidence from the past, from when you were very young, that you
Oh
mum told me
yeah,
about.
when I was reading this little
Uh-huh.
book when I was 12, my mum said, "Do you remember that guy that used to come to our house? And there was this very big, formidable man, and I would sit on his knee and he would ask me how I was doing at school, and then he would be buying antiques from my mum and trying to get the price down, you know?" And I said, "Yeah, I remember him really well." And he said, "Well, your dad came home one day and he had parked his car where I couldn't see it, and it was a silver shadow Rolls Royce. So I asked him when he came round what it was he did, as well as collecting antiques. And he said, I'm Peter Grant, the manager of Led Zeppelin.
Whoa. Okay, that's a cool story. And, Pete
Amazing.
Grant, the legend, man. So,
Yeah.
this like, is this fate? You being able to do this
Mhm.
documentary? Because from what I read, actually, without American Epic, probably or maybe the band wouldn't agree. I mean, Jimmy and Robert knew about American Epic, but
Yes.
John Paul Jones agreed because of American Epic, right?
Yeah.
He agreed
Yes.
to meet us because he liked American Epic. And then when we sat down with him, we had a 4 hour meeting and we took him through the storyboard. And we'd done so much research that he was really impressed, and he at the end of the meeting said, "This is me excited. When can we start?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and it was like, I mean, we were really prepared for the meeting,
yeah,
but the thing that was really helpful, and it really is in the film. This is in the movie itself. This is their story too.
yeah.
Is that with American Epic, what they liked about it was they knew that that film must have been really difficult to make because no one had seen that stuff before. I mean, these are legendary musicians, Charlie Patton, the Carter family, all these people. Most of this stuff had never been seen before. And so they knew what that was. They knew what was the work that went in there. And they also knew that their early part of their career there was very little film footage known of it, and that also they weren't aware of any interviews with John Bonham for more than a few sentences. And so there was definitely this thing once they agreed to do it. We go, how are you going to do this? I remember Robert saying, I don't think there's enough film footage to do this. And then Alison sort of said to him, she said,
Well, we made American Epic, which is about an era before there was even sound on pictures. So if anybody can find it and do it, we can.
yeah.
And he went, yeah, you're right. We will let you make this. And then they gave us total artistic control because we wanted it to be an independent movie.
Yeah, like American Epic, and they agreed, and they let their story be told like the American Epic stories were told, and so and they're following on in very good, proud company. Lydia Mendoza, the Charlie Patton, Mississippi John Hurt. I mean, this is prestigious company to be amongst.
I wanted to know about that, since, the guy from Led Zeppelin have always sort of controlled what's been told about them. I wanted to know if they get involved, like this should go this way or that way, or sort of guide you or let you go
No,
or point you a way to go on the story of how to be told on the
no,
documentary.
they didn't. The story was worked out before we went to see them. And we do that with all our films. We work out what we want to make before we start going to people. We figure, can we do this? So I would never go to anyone and say, oh, can I make a film about your life? And then they go, yeah, and then I'll figure it out. I'm going to figure out, is there a movie here? And so
we were on the same page though, because we wanted to tell it in their own words, and we wanted it to be about the music because that's what interests us. We wanted to tell the origin story because that's always the most exciting part, and we wanted to use full songs.
yeah. And so I think they were shocked when we said we wanted full songs. I mean, in a good way. They were like, really? And it was like, wow. And I went, yeah, because the audience have got to. We wanted to make a film for cinema, big cinema screen with big sound. So I want to hear that Led Zeppelin music playing in the cinema, I want to be at those shows, and I just want to feel and understand who these people are and be on this journey, this story that's, inspiring. But I want to hear that music. I think that was another thing when they realized, because we played full songs in American Epic a lot of the time,
So they really helped, though. They didn't try to steer the story, but they did give advice and extra photographs and things like they'd say, well, what about using this? And then they brought all their diaries, family photographs. The Bonhams gave us their never before seen film footage. And then Robert brought a never before heard recording from his Band of Joy. John Paul Jones brought a recording of his father that nobody heard before. So once they agreed to do it, they were just really helpful.
They were actually all in. They went for it, and so they turned up at the interviews with bags of photographs and recordings and things we'd never seen or heard before. And then also they knew that we were serious filmmakers and we researched. They were really good. They opened up their address books and gave us telephone numbers of the people that they'd grown up with, so we could go and meet all these people. So I think we did about 175 interviews for background research. So we met the person at Rod White who taught Jimmy his first chords on the guitar. We actually met him one time at the school in the playing fields where Jimmy had first seen him play. And in the, the people, we got to know the priest, the Rev Gordon Bates, who was the vicar that had John Paul Jones playing organ and choir master when he was 14. We tracked him down. He was in his 90s, and John and him hadn't seen each other since 1961, and found him. And then Robert, we met Perry Foster, who put Robert in the first group Robert was in, and then we met many of the people that Robert played in within bands, and then of course the session music. So it was really it was a very sort of, they were very supportive, they just sort of let's make film.
You visited. They're letting me know that I have time for a few more questions. So two more. I have to ask you, since I am too a Zeppelin fan. So when they told me about the interview, I was all in, and I knew we would only have little time, but I had to ask you about visiting Pangborn, that place where the first rehearsal happened. Do tell me about that. I read that you visited with Jimmy.
Well, so our first meeting with Jimmy, we were going through we had a storyboard of the film, and it was 7 hours walking through this, and he was very, very enthusiastic. He was adding all these ideas, memories and stuff. And then he said, look, I want to do this. And it was wonderful. And then we got a phone call probably a couple of days later, and he said, would you like to come to Pangbourne? And which was, as you said, was the site, his home, and where all the rehearsals after that first meeting took place. And so he said yes. And so we met him at
the Paddington train station. Yeah. We got the train together with him to Pangbourne, and we got off at Pangbourne station, and we wandered all around the village, and we went to the other side of the river. He showed us the boathouse, and he didn't want to go in the house because
because probably it changed, since he was there. But when we got there, what was wonderful is he said, I've never been back here since I sold it in, I think, 1970 or 71. He hadn't been back there since 71. And so it was just very magical being taken for the first time in almost 50 years back to this place with him. Yeah, it was this very wonderful, and we were come into my world. This is my world. This is where it happened. And the funny thing was, we got on this commuter train, and no one noticed us. But after we had been wandering around Pangbourne, we were standing on the train station, and all these schoolboys had come out of school, and they were waiting on this it's a tiny village, and they were waiting on the train station. They're 13, 14 years old kids. And they were like, you're Jimmy Page. And they all swarmed on us like this, And it was we were in this little dream world. There was this reminder of who we were with. It was really funny. And it was funny, of all the people, it was the teenagers that spotted him. And they were like, you're Jimmy Page. And they were going, and one of the kids said, do you know what the best record you ever made was? And it was like this kind of thing. Really funny.
Such a rare experience. I've never heard anyone having that experience with the members of Led Zeppelin, and we've seen Jimmy in documentaries like It Might Get Loud, and Robert Plant. Every once in a while you're able to have an interview with him because of his music, right? He keeps releasing solo records, but even John Paul Jones, how does he live? What does he do? We hardly see him. It's like thinking of John Deacon, the bass player of Queen. He hardly ever shows his face. So you had something very special. You having that experience there.
Well, we were aware. American Epic got us in the door, but we were aware that when they agreed to do this was a real gift. We knew we were in a very special place. And we also knew that if we didn't pull this off, no one else would make this film. It wouldn't happen. It would never be anything. So it was like, this is the only time to tell this story, And so we were very conscious to try and make this the best film ever made, a music film ever made. That was what we were trying to make, because we thought we're in this sacred place, and this is this untold story. And as you said, Zeppelin have always done very little media. I mean, virtually none. I mean, they reach their audience in the way the film shows you, going directly to the people in concerts. That was it, and amazing. And so there's no what I love, what is exciting about them and is interesting is they are as mysterious as those blues artists from the 1920s that are on American Epic. There's really, and so as you mentioned, John Paul Jones very rarely talks to anybody. He is happy to let the music speak, as I see it, speak for itself. And so to have these people actually go, I will actually talk to you like you're a family member. It's like you're their nephew or something. They're telling you it really openly. Yeah, I thought it was really special. So when we got those interviews done, we worked so hard to try and get the film like that storyboard, and so it was like what you're seeing on the IMAX screens. And so to have the audience response after all this work is like they're re-releasing it in America on IMAX now. I think they said it was like the most
successful music film of all time in IMAX.
In IMAX. And so those are those people. It's so lovely. It's all these people around the world going, this is you did it the right way, This is what we want to see. And so, and they wanted to see what we wanted to see on the screen. We just wanted to give the audience the best possible thing it was possible to make, like the most exciting,
the most beautiful,
musical, visual, and meaningful journey. And we wanted to also feel at the end that you knew these people. You had some real sense of them, who they were. These people that maybe you'd listened to for 2 or 3 years, or for 55 years you've been playing them. You would get to meet these guys and understand them. And what the hope was is that deeper understanding and their visuals would enrich your appreciation of the music. And we had a lot of people coming that watched the film, that like big fans, and they kind of go, God, I like them even more after watching it. And then I've got people that come in. We also made it for people like 100 years from now, maybe, that wouldn't know Led Zeppelin. They could come in and this film survives, and it's like this is it. This is who these people were, and this is it beginning.
Legacy defining.
And that's what I remember saying to Jimmy. So he smiled. I said, "We want to make a film that when we've made this film about this period, no one else can do it again. It's done. That's it. It's there. It is. Everything's there for this period that we're covering." The beginning of Led Zeppelin. And he smiled and he went, that's good,
Evidently, both of you love music, and it's a very important part of your life. Independently of whatever's going on with the current state of music and what people are listening to, do you think that a story like Led Zeppelin's could happen in this day and age? Four people incredibly able to play their instrument, four musical geniuses got into the studio in a very organic and natural way and start to produce music and rock and roll. Do you think something like that could happen nowadays?
Yes, I do believe it could happen. And that's one of the main reasons we made the film, is because I believe that there's a generation that's going to appear, they're going to see this film, and they're going to go, I'm going to start doing things this way, i.e., we're not going to listen to these big companies telling us that we have to communicate via these phones and via social media. The message of this film is, when you've got something you want to do in life, let's say it's play music, or you want to paint pictures or write books, whatever it might be, you got to go out there and do that thing, and you don't sit on your sofa on your phone. You keep doing that thing. That's what they're doing. And every single opportunity that comes up, they take it, and then they learn everything they can from that moment. So if they go and play with a band, or they go to recording, they're watching what everyone's doing and learning and learning. And if you do all that work and you're prepared and you spend all your time learning your craft, ignoring about promotion and that kind of thing, just learning everything you can, you will have an opportunity that happens to you in your life that was like when they met in that basement. And you will know what that opportunity, you will know that this is something special. And you will then be able to take all those years of hard work and apply it to running forward with this band, which is what they did. And so this is a film to show these kids you do not need to do things the way that these companies are telling you you've got to do things. You don't have to do things like related on the number of likes on social media or any of these things. That they all those things from that time when Led Zeppelin started, like singles, appearing on TV, they didn't do any of those things. They'd figured out, no, we're going to go this particular way to reach our audience. And we're gonna record the album ourselves and own it, and we're gonna control it. And so they'd figured all this stuff out. And that's the message to the kids now, is you can do it too.
And that's how we did it.
And that's how we made the film. We did it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We just worked hard and prepared for it, So the film is the same as the band, is the same as all these things. It's like, do your thing, but work and prepare. Prepare for that moment in the rehearsal, or that moment when you're sitting in front of Jimmy Page and you're saying, I would like to make a film about you, but we're prepared. We've done the work. So our American Epic was like our session career, if you will. Like, we were ready, and then, writing it was like our Yardbirds, and then we're in the rehearsal room and it's like, let's see what happens. So yeah, it's absolutely fair. I believe that that's what's going to happen. I think this is all going to change these systems of communication that have been imposed on us over the last 20 years. I think it's all going to change. And I think people are going to rebel, and they're going to be doing much more direct things with each other. And I think this is what this movie's about.
I think I'm taking longer than expected, but it's been a lovely conversation. Honestly, one last question. Allison, Bernard, I would like to know separately if you have a favorite Led Zeppelin album. After all this research, I'm sure the song, the albums, and the music mean something different, and you discover something during the research and getting deep down into the record. So I'm just curious, since you were able to have this access to the band and the members of the band, what do you think about the records now? Like, if you have an album you could pick.
Well, for me, it would be, Led Zeppelin 1 and then or 2. They're pretty close. And for Allison?
Well, my favorites, can I give you my favorite song? My favorite song is Ramble On. And I love the moment in the film where Robert pulls out his handwritten lyrics. And he's actually from a beautiful part of the West Midlands where Tolstoy is from. Tolkien is from, and Shakespeare. And so I just think that is such a beautiful song. The fact that he's still got his lyrics from back in the time, that's my favorite moment in the film, and it's also my favorite song.
Yeah, and for me, those two albums, I think particularly the second one, because it expands on the ideas of the first one. I have a deep love for those now, it's because every time I heard them when I was making the film, I loved the music. That was if the film, you're doing all this work to try and get the film so it flows as powerfully as possible. When the songs came up, I was like, my God, this sounds amazing. We went to great trouble to get the purest audio sound. So you're hearing in the cinema, you're hearing the sound as it was meant to be heard in 1969. It has not been adjusted for modern tastes or to appeal to the kids. You're hearing the original lacquer cuts that were made by Bob Ludwig and George Piros and people like this at that time. That's what you're hearing. And so it really is transporting you back into the sound of that time, which is really powerful. It's like a peak of recording. And so, so I think this music, it sustains. As I said, I've been inside it for years, and it always excites and interests my ear. And so, yeah, the funny thing is when I play other Led Zeppelin albums, I'm kind of like, wow, my God, because it's like I've literally not listened to those when I was making the album, and I come back and I hear Zeppelin 4 or How's the Holy. I'm like, bloody hell, wow, look at those records. But this is like, but you know, there's something very thrilling about the beginning, the first recordings of like a hugely influential group. There's always a very special energy on those recordings. They're just exciting. It's where everything is being in music. It's where their language is being defined, you know, and they're doing it on the fly. You know, they're like the second album was being recorded as they're touring. They're literally running into a studio for an hour or two, then doing a gig, then flying to the next place with the master tapes in hand, and then running into another studio. So that second record is filled with that energy that film shows. They literally, it's like being recorded with the sound of the audiences ringing in their ears as they go into a studio. This is really exciting, you know?
Is
And
you know I it reminds me of a phrase I listened to a DJ once saying it was something like Led Zeppelin was a band who rocked the world so hard that the earth feels still shakes because of what they did. Like these days, something like that. I don't know how to
That's
translate that line, but it's just awesome. Uh, Bernard, Allison, thank you very much. I do not want to take more of your time because I'm pretty sure you have a long press day ahead of you, but I really appreciate the extra time. And well, congratulations on a great job. I hope you're able to develop a second part because there's so much to tell. And well, for us fans,
yeah,
it's incredible, incredible access, incredible work, research, the jump on them audios and all that. So once again, thank you very much for your work.
thanks.
oh, our pleasure. And thank you so much for spreading the word, you know?